Sebastian Barry, you're so welcome to Cavan, and I'm glad we have fame to you now.
Well,
we can claim you now.
I've been thinking about Cavan and all the little bits of family stuff connected to Cavan for 35 years when I work. So it's to come up and see some of the... I mean, I went out to Omer today, if anyone knows it, near this town. I'd never seen it, but I've seen it in my mind's eye, and specifically in my child's mind's eye, where I was told about the Sheridans of Omer. And it was entrancing to go out and see it, although it was sad to see the house so derelict. But at the same time, if we keep telling human stories, somehow we keep everything alive, don't we?
You know the way sometimes when a great singer is up there and he's singing his songs, and you know these songs, but when he actually tells you the story of how he wrote his songs, the songs are so much different then. Well, you tonight, you told the stories of the characters and where your characters came from in your book, and I will look at your books now in a different way, and it gives them a whole new meaning. It gives it all a different sense when you picked sort of contemporary people and put them back into history. Well, it puts a different spin on it, really.
Well, the whole thing is a personal matter. And I think I've had most joy myself as a writer when people have taken the books quite personally, because I take them personally. So when somebody's talking to you in some ways as passionately about the book as you felt in writing it, then it gives you a recompense. You know, but there is no such thing. I mean, if you consider Seamus Heaney such a magical person, you know, writing about his mother, I mean, we know he's not writing about any mother. He's writing about his one single soul of a mother. And I mean, it's the same for all writers. We're not generalizing. We're particularizing. And that's the important thing.
Also, as well, your book in the secret scripture, that was beautiful. I myself work in a hospital, and I could tell, you know, I could see where, you know, kind of thing where that was coming from. And how did you get into the mind of the psychiatrist and the way he'd be thinking and things like that?
Well, as long as the good libel lawyers of Cavan aren't around when you're showing this. Well, I did have the privilege of a great friendship, with somebody in the following generation, Ivor Brown, who was Chief Psychiatrist of Ireland, which I think is a glorious title. And one night, when we were at dinner with him, many years ago, his asylum was on fire, and he had to rush away, and I went with him. And he brought me through the rooms and the wards of one of these very old, early Victorian asylums, late Georgian, in Dublin. And there was a revelation in that. We came into a room full of women, and I could see the lights of the city below, and I felt that some of those women had been there for a long, long time, and the city had forgotten them. But they were the mothers and the daughters and the aunts and the wives of the city, all forgotten. And I just felt in that moment 30 years ago that somehow or other it was my job to try and see who those people were, so that the city would remember them.
Yeah, beautiful story, and indeed, I remember at the time I read it about as well, everybody was talking about it. Everybody said, it's a great book, you must read it, and they did. When you say,
that's
when
how
you
books
get back
work.
to us, yeah, when you get
personal
back
matters.
Yeah, get back to your stories. Also, as well, your characters, you like to hold on to them as well, don't you?
Well, they're holding me up, so I better be holding on to them.
Yeah, sorry. When you were speaking there, you said, "Yeah, no, it's okay." You were saying there that you didn't have any particular religion, but I have to say that you're a very spiritual person, and that comes through. You can't deny that. That really comes through.
No, I think as a creature we are sometimes dangerously spiritual, sometimes wretchedly spiritual, but inescapably, and sometimes very richly spiritual. I mean, that's the odd... You know, there's a line in one of my plays, you know, where we are an upright ape, standing on our back legs, trying to reach the higher apples, and you can't expect too much of such a creature. So the reason religio, as you know, means to choose what you want to believe in, but I think everything is worth looking at tasting and misunderstanding in general.
I had a great conversation with Michael Harding, one of Cavan's great writers, and we had the same thing. What was the question of life? And he was saying, well, the power of now, but also finding your spirituality.
Yeah.
That your life could be that whole search, and that's what it is. Your life is a search.
Well, the greatest expert on spirituality might be the person with the poorest grip on it, because they're really trying to hold on. So maybe that's the person you should ask, not the really, integral, wholesome person. I mean, Michael is a great man. And he's also sort of desperado and kind of a Jesse James of writing as well. So he's the man to go to for that answer.
Okay, so when we were listening tonight, and some people said that they were listening to the stories of people who were in the wars and things like that, and that the people didn't speak of these wars, that there was a great silence. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, maybe there's a book there that if some of these people spoke, but you say no, it's silence wrapped around silence.
Well, there were recordings made. A lot of British soldiers and colonial soldiers did submit to recordings when they were older. But I think what people mean is that in their own family setting, it wasn't much discussed. I mean, even in the Second World War, my grandfather would come home from awful events he had witnessed, but people weren't that interested in Ireland. In fact, there was a sense in Ireland sometimes that maybe there wasn't a war, because of neutrality and propaganda and all the rest of it. And there is something very hidden about the world of the soldier. But you must respect that silence. The not talking about it is very important. And then finding the time. I started to write my book when I think I heard that maybe the last of the soldiers was gone. And I thought, now is the time when a fool can talk about it, because the wise men are gone.
And also as well, the way you said, like 100 years on, now we are able to speak about it. And I was thinking about the correlation there between religion, when we couldn't speak, we had this ferocious fear of the priest, and the priest had the power, and things were wrong and we knew we couldn't say, but now we can talk about it. Do you see a parallel there?
The real silence around priests, I think, was in the penal times, when you couldn't even say if you were a priest or not. I mean, all those things, those different sorts of silences, the good silences, the pernicious silences, they're all intertwined, and it's all a dance. I mean, it was a relief in this book to write about Father Buckley, who's a rather heroic priest who goes out after battles, because Catholic priests were allowed to do that, but Anglicans weren't allowed. But he would go out and minister to anyone who was in trouble on the battlefield. Just 10, 20 years later, when I'm writing The Secret Scripture, the young priest in that has been told now suddenly in the new country that he's an important person and he's a powerful person, and we must turn the country into a proper Catholic country, with disastrous results. So politics have an incredible effect upon the nature of priesthood in itself. And a part of our disaster in our time has been, the rather terrifying obeisance that was given to priests, which I don't think is helpful to anybody, and it created that murderous silence that we're now, which has done no one any good. Can you show me a priest who has benefited from the disasters of the last 40 years? There is no such person.
But as you say, now we're able to talk about it.
We are now, we're now free. Yeah, that is real. That's Irish freedom. That was worth fighting for.
Okay, Sebastian Barry, what is your next now? Have you got another novel in the...
I'm retiring instantly. I'm going to live in Cavan, quiet life, over a shop, and eat chips.
Okay, we know the exact shop. We have the exact place.
No, it'll be a secret, and I won't say anything about it.
Okay, Sebastian Barry, we'd like to thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
My great pleasure.
Really excited meeting you, and we want you to enjoy the rest of your evening in Cavan.
And my love to all my thousands of cousins in Cavan.